Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Mickey's wobbling in my lap. So I think I'll let her come off because she was not on secure footing. And I will plunge in with what PQR has to say. Lady C, I saw you on today's members channel and yesterday on Dan Wootton discussing Meghan's new podcast, Confessions of a Female Flounder. I think you meant founder. Actually, I think you most likely meant flounder. Very apt. Could you please address this topic for your viewers who aren't members? If you could also talk to the fallout from With Love Meghan, I think many of us are interested in what you'd have to say. Thank you very much. Well, I'll say first of all, no surprise here, Confessions of a Female Founder is already taken by someone else, a young woman of colour. Oh dear, now what was that about Meghan being very pro-black people and Meghan being very pro-women? Then she has a female black podcaster and steals the name from her. Oh dear, oh dear. How does that one work? Oh, sorry, I'm being very, very negative. Meghan has endowed her with the honour of using a name that she came up with. So Meghan is actually not stealing the name from her. She is honouring her by saying, oh, well, it's your name, but I can do much better and it's going to suit me better. There's also, of course, a second series of With Love Meghan, which was filmed during the first series. It's really series number 1, part A, then part B. And part B is going to coincide with fall, which is when possibly the axe is falling on Meghan and Harry's contract with Netflix. It runs out then. There are discussions behind the scenes to do something else at maybe 100th the price of the other. I'm being slightly facetious there, by the way. Let's see what happens, because I gather that Netflix is mortified by the adverse reaction to With Love Meghan. Not that surprised, but mortified. And they've had 1 hit from Harry and Meghan and 3 misses. But you see, they need content and they need to get value for their money. So even if they're going to be serving up turkeys pre-Thanksgiving in the fall, they will do it because at least that's a way of recouping some of their investment in Meghan and Harry. So there's that. I'm going to make an observation. Several of the Netflix stars have actually panned the show. Now, there is a trend in Hollywood at the moment for entertainers to go off script. For instance, that young woman whose name I will not be mentioning, who has gone totally off script with Sleeping Beauty, and evidently Disney is beside itself with horror at what she's been going the antics she's been up to. And of course, it's going to help to make the show not the success that it would otherwise have been. When are these people going to understand that if you're a member of a team, you sing from the same hymn sheet and you sing in tune, and you sing when you're supposed to and not when you're not? But anyway, well, the fact that several of the Netflix stars have panned with Love Meghan tells you an awful lot about what's truly going on behind the scenes, I am assured. Also, it's a good way out for the CEO of Netflix, the main CEO, not Ted Sarandos. So, the names of the Netflix stars who have been panning the show are Whitney Cumming, who claimed it was a gigantic FU to the royal family. I actually do not agree with that. I do not think that it's an FU to the royal family. I think Meghan thinks that by being ultra pretentious, she is going to best the royal family. And of course, she hasn't. Then there's Catherine Ryan, who used to be quite an avid backer of Meghan's. And she said that Meghan was putting on an, "Oh, I'm just so humble" act. Well, yes, Catherine Ryan, I'm glad you're late to the table, but you're sitting down to eat the crow that the fact of the matter is that Meghan dishes up. So, good for discovering that just because it looked like something else doesn't mean it's not crow. Then there's somebody called Christina Pazsitzky, who I'd never heard of, who said that Meghan was highly inauthentic, fake and phony, all of which is absolutely true. Then you had people piling on in the United Kingdom. Vogue Williams, whose husband Spencer Matthews is the brother-in-law of Catherine's sister Pippa. Spencer was in Made in Chelsea. We've done a show together some time ago. He's a nice young man. And take it from me, Vogue and Vogue Williams and Spencer Matthews, he wouldn't allow her to, and she wouldn't want to be negative about Meghan unless they knew it was not only safe, but desirable. And she mocked Meghan's rainbow plate, and she said that one of her outfits was disgusting. Well, then of course you have Prue Leith, who is a chum of the Queen Camilla, and knows the King well. And she and her husband, John Playfair, were discussing their second series of Cotswold Kitchen, which has just started on ITV. And she said to Rob Rinder, who I also know and is actually absolutely delightful, she said that, Rob asked Prue if she'd seen the show yet, and Prue said, "No, I've only read about it, but I honestly wouldn't watch it." And then when Kate Garraway asked her why, she said, "Well, I'm not a Meghan Markle fan." And Kate Garraway said, these incidentally are all famous personalities in the United Kingdom. When Kate said, who's also absolutely charming, oh, why not? She replied, well, I don't know. All that sort of touchy-feely mindfulness, endlessly worrying about what creams you put on your hands. In other words, Meghan is absolutely superficial. Meghan has nothing to offer. Meghan is a bore. And then, of course, we also have Mindy Carlin or Kalin. I don't know how it's pronounced. But I think she's actually very actually successful, because her show is topping everything. So not only was Meghan rude about her and rude to her and made her film the same scene repeatedly, so Mindy Kaling is very professional, and it shows how professional she is, because evidently her show Running Point has received, at the time of these figures being collated, over 12 million views, adding to last week's 9 million, while Meghan managed 500 and something views. So, I think I've answered the question. It's so long ago, I'd better just check. I think Confessions of a Female Flounderer will be interesting to watch for the first 10 or 20 minutes, because if Meghan is involved, no matter who she's with, you can depend on it, she is going to dominate the program, and somehow it's all going to be about her, and all the lessons that those women have to give us, the public, will be lost in the Meghan fest that she is going to insist upon. If she doesn't, and I hope for her sake she doesn't, because I'd like Meghan to be successful in something so that she can continue to bore her admirers, and that she will continue to stay well away from this country. We don't want her back here, and we don't want her being a drain on our royal family. We want her to be a success. Of course, character is destiny, and Meghan's character is so appalling that really the realities, and her personality is so appalling, she's so artificial, that the reality is that the likelihood is she's not going to be a success. Anyway, enough of that. Becca Stephanie Thornquist says, wow, Lady C. Incidentally, this is one of many comments. So, my dream came true today. You putting that Narinder Kaur in her place on Dan Wootton's show today. Well done for standing up to that intimidating woman. But I have to say that she was extremely rude to you. She was extremely offensive, and all that came out of her mouth was verbal diarrhea. I hope that her terrible behavior didn't cause you stress and anxiety. Sending you and your fur babies lots of love. Day before yesterday, I was on Dan Wootton Outspoken. I did 2 bits of it. I did the public bit, then I did the other bit, which I suspect will end up being aired publicly sometime. I haven't seen it yet. Sorry, I've just been too busy. But it was an extremely unpleasant experience. I think that, before we were speaking perfectly civilly, and she complimented me on my pearls and what beautiful skin I had and what sort of creams and beauty regimen did I have. And I told her what I use and what makeup she wanted to know. I told her. And she's a good looking woman, and I told her that as well. Well, it's obviously her shtick. And she obviously she's a one-horse wonder. She is a race-baiting, hateful individual who thinks that it's okay to be as vicious, offensive, and nasty as she can possibly be on the grounds that she is a woman of colour and she is going to be fighting the colour battle when she doesn't need to. I found her totally irrational. I found her just hateful. She had no argument save that Dan and I are racist and that I'm a racist because I don't worship at Meghan Markle's feet. And I tried to point out to her that just because someone's a fellow person of colour, which Narinder and Meghan are, Narinder I think is Indian, doesn't mean that she has to like somebody who is patently unlikable. But where I thought she went totally over the top, and I mean she has absolutely no manners. I had to point out to her that if she continued, I'm asked a question, I'm answering it, and I can't even get the words out of my mouth before she's jumping down my throat and taking over again. She seems to think that shades of Meghan Markle, she's the only person who should have a say in anything. And so I can well see why she likes Meghan so much, because I think she's looking in the mirror. And I had to point out to her that if she continued, I was just going to walk off the show, which I would have done. And so I think Dan modified her at that point. And then she said that I had never experienced colour prejudice. And this is really interesting because it shows what a true racist she is, because she seems to think that white people who don't like brown or black people on good grounds are racist, but black or brown people have a right to abuse white people for no reason at all, except that their tastes do not accord. And she then spun around and made the huge error of saying that I had never experienced racism. And I had to point out to her, not only had I experienced it, but I have the corpses to prove it and the shot bodies to prove it. My grandfather, my father, and my cousin. I forgot to mention my brother-in-law, and I could have gone on, but I got the point across. And I just thought, this woman is she just spews forth venom. She is, if she had valid points, I would be perfectly happy. But she doesn't. She is totally irrational. She is just a spewer of venom. So I haven't seen it, and I found it extremely unpleasant. I think she thinks it's okay because that's the role she has allotted herself. And I think she thinks it's entertainment, and she doesn't understand that, she can have the race-baiting role and still behave reasonably and decently. Well, she didn't. She was absolutely appalling. So, and several other people have commented on it. So thanks for that. Thank you. Paulina Peter says, Dear Lady C, I recently saw a photo of some of the young European royalty. Oh, yes, Aurora. including Princess Ingrid Alexandra of Norway, Princess Estelle of Sweden, daughter of Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden, and Crown Princess Katerina Amalia of the Netherlands. There is quite a large crop of children and grandchildren of European royals who are in their late teens and early 20s. My question is whether you think there will ever be a resurgence of European royals intermarrying. The trend has certainly been to allow commoners into royal families in the last 30 years, I'd say longer. But I wonder if there aren't advantages being lost when these young royals don't consider each other as marriage partners. It does away with the problem of the commoner partner having to adapt to royal life, which, as we've seen, can be quite treacherous. It could also foster closer bonds among the families. I would love to hear your opinion. Thank you. Interesting question. I'll tell you, one of the problems of being from a royal family or a grand family is the restrictiveness and the feeling of oppression that you get in terms of expectation. And so, unless you're in the top job or pretty near the top job, unless you have been brought up to really appreciate the importance of your role as a public servant, many of them will want to do a bunk. So the girls especially want to marry, well, both boys and girls want to marry for love. And they find outsiders more interesting, less restrictive, more natural, because the outsiders are not brought up to be as restrictive and to be as almost rigid. Rigid is not the right word, but anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. I think you get the point that I'm making. So they enjoy having outsiders who make them feel freer, and in their private lives they are freer, while if they are with fellow royals, there's less electricity, let's put it that way. So I get it. I really do. I don't think there's going to be a trend of royals intermarrying ever again. If they fall in love, that's a different matter. Where intermarriage starts to become more viable in the old-fashioned sense is in the lower rungs of royalty and within the aristocracy and the old money elite. Because having gone through from the end of the Second World War until relatively recently, the period where everybody of my generation was busy kicking over the traces and marrying for love, and scorning the injunctions of our parents because so old-fashioned. A lot of us have had marriages that have failed, and we have come to realize that we were chasing pipe dreams, and our children have been often the products of broken families, have come to realize that maybe it's better to have a marriage with somebody of a similar background who it starts out a little bit less exciting, but it ends up more solid. So I think that might have answered the question. I hope it has. J. Fra says, Lady C, I'm extremely interested in your discussion on Meghan's psychology. I have a background in education, specifically with young people who are learning disordered or have behavioral problems. I found that there were many links between the child and parental issues, history, or behavioral patterns. Do you think that Meghan and Harry are both products of their parents' lifestyles before their birth? I think you're trying to ask, was Harry affected by Diana's bulimia? And was Meghan affected by Doria's drug taking during pregnancy? There's no doubt that Diana had serious bulimia when she was pregnant with Harry, and there is no doubt that Doria was busy smoking pot and crack while she was pregnant with Meghan, because there are witnesses to it. So it is a moot question whether they were born defective as a result of their mother's health issues. There is a possibility. How strong is a moot question, but there is definitely a possibility that both those individuals were born flawed as a result of their mother's habits during the pregnancies. So it adds a layer of complication if they were born defective, because it means it wasn't their fault, so to speak. And it also means that it would be that much more difficult to rectify. So it's not a get out of jail card, but it certainly has the get out of jail card in the pack. Let's put it like that and leave it at that. Sid K says, Lady C, I'm no fan of Meghan Markle. Big no fan. I think what she did to the Queen, Princess Catherine, and the entire royal family crossed a line into not just opportunistic bad behavior, but true evil. And I believe that she continues in this evil behavior with the systematic narcissistic of abuse of Harry and her own children. But if Meghan has a brain defect, and certainly a personality disorder, several, ! That would make it impossible for her to have a conscience, and thus impossible for her to have remorse. Is there a measure of forgiveness and empathy because of that defect? Is there any path for her to find forgiveness in God if she can't recognize the evil in her behavior? If she was born damaged, what does that mean for her spiritually? Is there no hope for her soul? I know you're not God. Thank goodness you do that. And perhaps this question can't be answered, but I believe you have based your life in spiritual principles, and I would really appreciate your thoughts on this. I'm going to answer it because I have often thought of this myself. And this is a true dilemma. This is a profundity that goes to the heart of the matter with people who are born defective. Whether, say, for instance, there is a school of thought that true psychopaths are born with defective amygdalas. I would say, first of all, doubtless God created all of us, and doubtless God has his own plan. And doubtless God knows what we don't know, and therefore I would not be presumptuous enough to say that I think. I know an awful lot of people who are religious say, well, it says in the Bible, it says in the Quran, it says in this, it says in the that all these holy books are guides towards enlightenment. And I think that we human beings are insignificant and know very little about major things, including what God's purpose is for all of us, and what God will accept and what God won't. Yeah, we have guidance via various holy books, but that's the tip of the iceberg. God has the whole of the iceberg. So I have no difficulty with believing that God will deal with each and every one of us according to his determinations, not ours. And we are all creatures of God, and I suspect that some of us can't do but turn our back on God, and maybe God will forgive them before he forgives those of us who are not quite so flawed. It's a possibility. It's an academic situation. It's an esoterica to which there is no answer, and each of us has our own beliefs. But that, however, doesn't mean that we have to accept destructiveness or bad behavior. Whether destructive people are fulfilling God's purpose, just as how constructive people are fulfilling God's purpose. Because if he's created everybody, in some ways, everything is under his umbrella. And this is one of the interesting dichotomies where religion is concerned. Because, of course, God is not necessarily going to tell you to be bad. Obviously not. But maybe he's more forgiving than we give him credit for being. And maybe he's more forgiving than we think. And he has a master plan that we don't know about. So that doesn't mean that we have to accept, and we shouldn't accept. It is our duty to be constructive. It is our duty to have consequences. It is our duty to ensure that other people don't victimize. It is our duty to protect ourselves. It is our duty to make sure that wrongdoers are called to order. That's our duty. We're not God. We don't have to forgive them. We don't have to accept their nonsense. We shouldn't accept their nonsense, even when we forgive them. So, I suspect that answers the question. And I'll just make one or two points where Meghan is concerned. irrespective of whether she was born flawed or not. She is resourceful, she is energetic, albeit lazy, but she's still energetic. She's obsessed with projecting an idealized vision of herself, which is so out of touch with the reality that we can all see. And it's also so dated, it's out of date with the zeitgeist. It is a 1950s now, and it was a 1980s before concept. So she is projecting an image that she wants us to believe that she embodies, when it's quite clear to us that she doesn't embody it. She's ultimately a very unlikable individual, and discerning people dislike her because they can see the artifice. They can see she's a phony. They can see that she is not what she pretends to be. They find that discomforting. Also, she's trying to force us to forego all our powers of discernment and observation and reason and recognize her for something that we clearly see she's not. So there's an element of, how dare you see that I'm a fraud and a phony? How dare you? You're supposed to accept me at my estimate of myself. Don't you dare try to bring your powers of perception to this situation. You need to know your place, which is that I, Meghan Markle, will tell you what you need to see. Do you see? It's a really sick and very dominating and very disturbed and disturbing message that she conveys, and people pick it up. She also wants recognition for what she is not. She doesn't want recognition for what she is, which is a hustler and a pathetic who is greedy for attention and approbation and fame and fortune. She wants us to believe she's the Virgin Mary multiplied by 10, rolled into Diana, Princess of Wales, with a dash of Mother Teresa thrown in for good measure. And she isn't even a convincing actress. I mean, nobody actually, except for the few pathetics who don't have any discernment, fall for it any longer. And she seems to think that all the world's a stage, as Shakespeare said. Well, Shakespeare was using an analogy that Meghan doesn't seem to understand is not analogous to her situation, because Meghan may think all the world's a stage, but we know the world is also real life, and we know she's not real, and we don't like it. And it disturbs us because we live in an age where, largely thanks to the internet and television and the access that the public now has to famous people, you know, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, even into the 80s, you could have world famous people who you didn't really quite know what they were about, because all the information was fed through the media, through the newspapers primarily, and any interaction, say via television, was on a strictly controlled basis. So people could be fraudulent and get away with it. They can't now because people see through the act. So people want authenticity. They expect it. It's not only that they want it, they expect it, and they rebel against anything that's inauthentic now. And Meghan is one of the most inauthentic people that it has been anyone's displeasure to encounter in public life. People know she's not what she pretends to be. They can sense it, they can see it, they can feel it. They are sufficiently sophisticated, which, you see, she also doesn't realize that she's not as sophisticated as she thinks she is. And we are not as dumb as she thinks we are. And that we can see she's obviously a fraud, posing as somebody who we should admire because she is authentically admirable. When we have the trail of corpses littered around her, and know what she did to her father, know what she did to her sister Samantha, know what she did to the late Queen, know what she callously did to Prince Philip as he was on his deathbed. That's just a few of the things. We know how she and Harry have allowed the Sussex squad to harass and denigrate Catherine and say that she was dead, or that she had been beaten up, and that she was on life support, and all the nonsense that they came up with, and that Catherine no longer existed, or that she existed and her cancer's a phony thing, and endless, really vicious, nasty, evil rubbish. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with her. People see her for what she is. That's her problem. I discovered when I was in the jungle, which I had no idea the effects that it would have. For the previous 42 years, I had been saddled with misrepresentation by the mainstream media. It took nearly 3 weeks of me being in the camp, not dressing myself up as anything I wasn't, no makeup, no nothing, and no pretense. I was just myself. I came out of the jungle to discover that people liked me. 42 years after having been traduced and then traduced for the next 42 years, people had seen me for what I truly am, and they had never seen me for what I truly was before. Either they didn't know about me, or they knew about me and they didn't know the truth. And all it took was a few weeks in the camp in I'm a Celebrity, in really rather unfortunate circumstances, for people to think, actually, we like her. Well, that's happened to me, and the absolute opposite has happened to Meghan. The more people got to know her, is the more they disliked her. And the more she keeps on trying to pretend to be something she's not, is the more people will dislike her. And I'm afraid she can't actually fess up to what she is, because she is an unreconstituted cow. And there is no way about it. And I don't mean to be insulting to cows, but I don't want to use the word that I would rarely use. She can try whatever she wants to try. People have her measure. Once people get your measure, then they decide whether they like or dislike you. And it's as simple as that. CC says, Many people don't realize if the US goes bankrupt with the $37 trillion debt, it will bring about a world depression that will make the 1930s look like great times. Thank you very much for that observation. This is one of the points I tried to make the other day, and we are ending on a more serious note because really everybody has skin in this game, whether they realize it or not. And we need to have our eyes open, our ears cocked, and we need to be thinking because we are living in times that require a degree of responsibility and clear-sightedness. Leslie MacDonald says, Dear Lady C, thank you so much for addressing the trade wars responsibly. You're one of the very few I've seen who has done so. Well, I have no agenda. And also, no one is employing me. I can speak the truth. I have enough independence that my bread and butter doesn't depend on taking any side except the side of the truth. The trade deficits of the US are astonishingly grave. In 2024, Canada, minus 64 billion 192 million 303,669. I might have said that wrong, but you get what I mean. China, minus 295 trillion 401 million. So 295 billion 401 million 646,636 dollars. Mexico, minus 171 billion 809 million 239,538 for examples. I don't know what the answer is. There are no easy answers. That's the point. I know we're all in this together. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Prices in the US are up and will continue to rise just as everywhere else. The stock market has been frightening. I understand that tariffs can bring about significant suffering, but if the US actually goes under economically, we'll all be much worse off. Absolutely. I have sympathy for every country involved in this debacle, but I believe something needs to be done now. Well, decades ago, really, but we can't change the past. I don't want to argue with people about it, so I've stayed quiet, but I really appreciate that you've addressed this with such reason and tact. Thank you very much. It is reassuring to know that there are clear-sighted people out there who are not party political and don't really care whether one politician has good manners and the other is a pig, as long as we are dealing with the reality that we need to deal with, and we will solve the problems. That's what counts. And I'm going to end with Grant Hayter Menzies. He's a well-known writer. He's a lovely man. He's a Canadian American. And I'm going to end with him. He says, Lady C, thank you for addressing the Canada annexation thing. As a Canadian American who has been studying Trump for some time, I don't for an instant take this or many other of his claims seriously, because I understand he is a deal maker, a transactionalist, a game player, and he's indulging in a bit of rough wooing. He knows very well that Canada is a sovereign nation. Another factor in all this is that he loathes Justin Trudeau, a sentiment with which many a Trump-hating Canadian can sympathise. I love it. Part of the problem here in Canada stems from efforts on the part of the corrupt Liberal and left-wing parties that have nearly wrecked Canada over the past 10 years, linking, surprisingly for them, patriotism to paranoia and scaring the uninformed the way our state-owned mainstream media has mesmerized Canadians on other issues beneficial to their agenda. There is so much happening in this country now that even the most outrageous fantasist could not have imagined. P.S. The most reputable polls point to a Conservative win for Pierre Poilievre, and not a moment too soon. That is, if the installed PM Carney ever calls for an election. Well, he has to. We also labour here under the challenges of having an unqualified Governor General. I am not party political, but I do believe that the West has taken things to the outer limit in terms of entitlement and in terms of injudiciousness, and that we are having to pay a price. And our children and grandchildren will pay a greater price if we don't start to pay the price now. I think all the moralistic rhetoric about right and wrong that is mouthed by people who are happy to kill other people in their hundreds of thousands and millions, potentially, is Sadducee and Pharisee sanctimoniousness taken to the absolute outer limit, unacceptably. Yes, it would be nice if we lived in a perfect world, but we don't. And we need to understand that it's up to each and every one of us, in my view, to cut our cloth according to the realities of the time and have sufficient personal and societal responsibility to understand that each of us has a role to play, and each of us has to play the role to the best of our abilities. And that means that at times we don't feel good. It's as simple as that. When you're swallowing medicine, you're not supposed to feel good. And sanctimoniousness has no place in any of this. And, you know, my situation, as everybody else's, is not as hunky-dory as it would have been had things been different. We have huge problems in the United Kingdom that need to be addressed. Huge problems in the United States, huge problems in Europe. We are a declining civilization. Anybody who knows anything about history knows our civilization has peaked. There are others on the up and up. That doesn't mean that if we don't play our cards right, that we won't still have skin in the game, because we will. And if we play our cards properly now, Europe will be a counterbalancing weight against China. There will be India. Ultimately, there's got to be Brazil. There will be the United States of America. We need to understand that we are at a crossroads and we need to take the high road, the right road. Yeah, at the moment, it's going to be a little bit rocky, but by the time the 10 millionth car has passed over it, it's going to be as if it was smoother than silk. Practice makes perfect. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. Take good care. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and a bientôt. Bye-bye.